can be successful. So the centrality of leadership continues to be important. What can we do to continue to improve student learning and wellbeing outcomes? And we've just started a bit of a narrative. Quality teaching and quality leadership should be about ensuring that we improve student learning outcomes. So the definition of quality educational leader is about proving student learning and wellbeing outcomes. So the student is the end user. We're just starting to have a richer discussion around what happens when those conversations and the design happens with students. Does that improve the outcome development? And we're just bordering on that here in some of our explanation. But when Hina asked me to talk about two areas of professional learning, conflict resolution and managing others, I sort of had a bit of a think about it, because we've had to face the same thing here in Australia. And in the slide deck that you'll see in the comments area, lots of links I've put in to start to look at the portrait model. It's typical in a number of countries and regions, particularly for high school students, that there is a portrait of the graduate. And schools can talk about when a student leaves this school, they will be able to do A, B, C, D, and F. So there's some sort of defined portrait of what a graduate student looks like, and the system provides resources to that. But when we start to talk about the causal link between ensuring that we've got graduates graduating from school with all the right outcomes achieved, where's the discussion about what the teacher or educator profile looks like? So what does that mean for our teachers? And what does a leader portrait look like? So what is a portrait of a quality leader in Pakistan? There is some definition of that, because you do have national professional standards for teachers, and there may be some weaving of that of what the Pakistan government, the Pakistan profession, and the Pakistan population would want every teacher to know and be able to do. And we have 10 things there that, of course, would have under areas. And that may be as robust as it needs to be. So we have a very clear portrait of what a teacher is in Pakistan, but we don't seem to have clarity and about what a leader looks like, it is expected to know and be able to do in Pakistan. And once we knew what that is, what does the leader provide in terms of professional learning and development to help the teachers to achieve the national professional standards? And what do teachers have to be able to know and be able to do to ensure an agreed exit development of a student? So there's a lot of work being done around students, but not enough about teachers, and hardly anything about leaders. When I looked around the world, and this is part of my PhD, there is some standards framework. So this gives some life to the National Board of Policy and Education Administration in the United States. And the current PSL and NELP standards are being used by about 44 out of the 50 states as the design and stated portrait of what a leader has to be able to know and do to ensure that they can help a teacher achieve what they need to know and be able to do, and for those teachers to know and teach and with the students know what they need to be able to learn and do. So to put that in an example, in a logic model, at the moment in Australia, a portrait of a leader, a principal specifically in Australia, they need to be able to know and able to do these things, that they ensure successful learners, are confident, creative individuals, and actively informed citizens in every school. And so the Australian principal needs to ensure there's quality learning, teaching, and schooling through our 5 professional practices, and they are leading and teaching, developing self and others, and so on. And I've done a previous discussion about the professional standards here in Australia, and you can find that on the AITSL website. So we've got accidentally a description of a portrait of a principal in Australia. We weren't thinking that when we wrote that, and didn't know anything about the portrait development of what a principal needs to know and be able to do in that sort of cultural environment. But just to give you an example, because we're actually going to talk about that with the Pakistan design in a little while. If we were trying to achieve these things, ensure everybody becoming a principal could achieve to a high standard those professional practices, and as a result of that, every learner was confident, creative, and active citizens in schools, what do we need to put in place to ensure that happens for every principal, aspirant, and appointed? So we'd have to have formative policy levers that help that. We need to have the leadership standards, which we have. We need to have a program standard. And what I mean by that, in some countries, they've designed a professional learning program to ensure every principal, aspiring principal, learns a consistent, well-developed program of learning so that they can demonstrate that they can achieve, present and achieve the professional standards of a principal. We'd need to have some thought, design, thinking, monitoring, and evaluation to make sure what our portrait currently looks like hits the mark. We'd actually have to have trained faculty and facilitators like the PPDCI, and trained coaches to ensure those are trying to achieve those areas of the principal standard can do so. Then we'd think about the activities. If we've got all those inputs in place, and we don't have them all in place in Australia, we've only got the leadership standards and some programs that are offered in different places, but that's the only thing we've got. But if we were doing this well, like is found in other countries, the activities would include a recruitment, selection, and induction processes that include leadership profiling and 360s. I have found in other countries that they don't always let some people aspiring to be a principal do so. They need to go through more professional learning at a lower level to become a principal. So in other countries, recruitment, selection, induction is quite rigorous. We need to think about delivery capacity. Like you in Pakistan, we have extremely remote schools, and of course have many, many in high urban areas as well. We'd have to think about a contemporary curriculum that reflects the current work of principals, and to continually do an audit of that to catch up with what principals are having to know and be able to do. And you would have some vision of what that looks like in Pakistan and the other countries online. We need to have some ways that the aspirants and those already appointed get to practice this in other places. Just like anybody training to be a doctor, there would be residentials and internships so they can see the practice of quality leadership in other places. They'd also need to be qualified coaches to help these people become high quality principals, and a tracking system to understand the applicant's impact once they're in school. So there's some of the activities we might think about and drill down into the curriculum, what those are. So when we were potentially talking about conflict resolution and distributive leadership and working up and managing up and down in a school, that would be in the curriculum. And so we've got to know what that curriculum needs to respond to in terms of a portrait of a leader that includes the professional standards. Then how would we know that's working? If we've invested, if the Pakistan government tomorrow announced it was investing $1 billion or Pakistan equivalent into every person wanting to be a principal going through a rigorous training program, and every principal that is in place getting ongoing professional learning, you want to make sure that whatever was designed in those inputs and activities paid off, was worth it. So we do, at the same time in our logic models, think of the outputs, how many people went through the program. EHIP is Effective High Impact Principal Program graduates. Were the program standards, the routines and the structures worthwhile? Did they deliver on what we hoped? Were the program materials as they were designed to developed and implemented? Was the faculty effective? Were there good facilitators? And were the coaches not telling the aspirant what to do, but walking them through a journey? Were there a number of hours of coaching? And would we have an effective leadership tracking system so